We are very honored that Mr. Bostan accepted to take the stage. It's the first time that a government official takes the stage at How to Web Conference 2015. And now let's get back to business and continue with our talks. How many of you work too much? Raising hands. I sometimes used to say that there is no work-life balance, there's only life. And then I got my first burnout, and then my second. And I'm still struggling to find an equilibrium between work and life. And that's why I'm very happy to have Martin with us today. Martin is a serial entrepreneur and best-selling author. He's the co-founder of Rainmaking and Startup Bootcamp. And he's written a book that's a bestseller and has been translated in lots of languages. The book is called Winning Without Losing, and it's about finding the equilibrium we're searching for in our life. Martin, your startup or your life? Should we choose, or we can have it all? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm very happy to be here. My girlfriend is actually Romanian. Cosmina, can you please stand up? So it's really nice to be here. We met in Washington D.C. So it's quite fun to now come here to Bucharest together. My name is Martin Bjergegaard. I'm co-founder of something called Rainmaking. And I would call myself a startup enthusiast. So I'm going to tell a little bit about my background so you understand my motivation for writing this book that I'm going to talk a bit about. And then I'll give you 6 very specific advice from the book, because I know you didn't just come here to listen to me talking. You came here to get some specific advice for how to become more successful and maybe even to have a better life quality while you become very successful. So my own personal life story is that I grew up with a dad who was an entrepreneur. So for me, it was very natural that I wanted to start my own business. He came home and said, now we're going to get rich. I have this great idea. We never became rich, but I did see an entrepreneur in action doing all kinds of different things, and that was inspiring to me. So when I was 18, I decided to try to set up my own business, because I could see my dad had many flaws. He did so many things wrong, and I needed to distance myself a bit to him to create my own startup. And I did that, and since I was 18 to 23, I tried 5 different startups, and they all failed. So if you are failing with your startup right now, or if you are going to fail the next 5 times you attempt, or if you even fail 5 times already, don't give up yet. There's still hope for you. And there was definitely hope for me. But after those 5 years, I was actually quite depressed, a little bit desperate. I didn't know what to do. And what can you do when you don't know what to do? You can go back to school to learn something, I guess. That was what I did. My mom told me that was a good thing to get an education. And for 5 years, I kind of didn't take her advice. But then I thought maybe it's time for me to go to university and learn something. And I did that for a couple of years, and I helped some entrepreneurs on the side because I couldn't stay away from entrepreneurship. And after that period, I thought, I want to see how the big companies work, because I feel I have to come up with everything on my own. I feel actually quite incompetent in a lot of the things I do. So I want to learn how the big companies are doing things. And what is the most efficient way to do that? I thought maybe become a management consultant, because then you can see a lot of companies in a short period of time. And I was a bit impatient. So I got a job at McKinsey. I don't know if you know of McKinsey, but this is this huge management consultancy company. I'm sure they have an office here as well. And they make you work all the time. And that was where I really started to feel what it does to you when you work all the time. And it surely didn't make me happy. And after 15 months, I couldn't sleep anymore. And if any of you tried that, when you can't sleep anymore, things go downhill quite fast. After 4 days, 4 nights without sleep, I knew that I had only one option, and that was actually to call back to the HR department and tell them over the phone. I was stationed on a project in Kuwait City. I told them back in Copenhagen, where I was hired, that I quit. And Connie, the nice woman on the other end of the line, said, "But Martin, please come home. You know, the project is over in 2 weeks. Let's talk about it. We'll find a nice project for you here in Copenhagen." But I have to say to her, "Connie, you don't understand. I really need you to put into your system that I have officially resigned." and when she did that, then I could go up to my hotel room and I slept like a baby. And this was a really eye-opener for me. I noticed how my body had been trying to tell me something. I hadn't listened. And when I finally listened, life became a lot better. So I started tuning into my body a lot more from there on. And now, after quitting that job, I started to think more about that. I wanted to get back to entrepreneurship, because that was really what I'm excited about. Probably for the same reason that you guys are excited about it. I wanted to create something. But at the same time, I didn't feel that I was fully ready to do it on my own. So I thought, what about if I work for some successful entrepreneur and I see how he or she is doing things? So I found a very successful Danish entrepreneur and managed to get a job where I'll be working right next to him across his 6 companies that he had created, all in the food industry. One of them is the best restaurant in the world, called Noma. And a lot of other food businesses, catering companies and stores like that. And I really had fun in that job, because I saw how he was doing things. I built up my confidence, because while I could learn things from him, there was definitely also a lot of things that he wasn't an expert at, and where I could add some value. So it felt like being almost an entrepreneur again. But of course, after a year and a half, I got a business idea. Finally, my confidence was high enough for me to come up with an idea of my own and to go out and pursue it. And this time, finally, I was successful. And that felt great, at least for a year or something like that. It felt really, really great. We had a revenue of $4 million the first year. I'm converting for you, because this was in Denmark, so it was in Danish kroner, which probably doesn't mean anything to you. But around $4 million the first year. It didn't require a lot of funding to start it. So actually, I managed to own most of it, together with this entrepreneur, because he was my business partner to begin with. And then after a year and a half, I looked at this business and I thought, it's a really good business. It was in the catering industry. It's an online platform for lunch for companies. I thought, I can probably become successful and wealthy and everything is good with this project. But at the same time, I started missing out on some things. I missed actually having like-minded colleagues which I had at McKinsey. I was sitting alone. I had my staff, but I felt quite lonely. My business partner was, of course, he had a bigger thing going on, and he didn't really spend time with me on it. So I felt quite lonely in the project. Also, working for him, I've been working across 6 companies, which I really enjoyed. And now I was just working on one company, and I was at the time still quite young and eager to do stuff, and it was a quite heated business environment. So together with 3 friends, we came up with the idea to make a company factory. We became very excited about that. Imagine if we launched 4 new companies every year together, us friends. We raise a lot of money, we have a decent office, we can have a good infrastructure where we have bookkeeping, a marketing expert, a SEO expert, things like that. So, and then we will learn so much faster than if we just did one startup. And that became Rainmaking. And we each had some companies going. We put that into a pool. We raised some money from some investors. Again, this is 2006, so things were very heated. And it was possible to be a bit creative. And then we came up with the concept of Rainmaking. And since then, that's been 9 years now. Since then, we have launched 24 companies. We sold 6 of them. Because they turned out to be successful, and we always thought that we would be focusing on the early stage, up till 30, 40 employees or something like that. A few times we have had them until 100 or 150 employees, but in general our idea has been to focus on the startup phase and then to sell them to someone else when it gets to be more operations. And so we sold 6 of the companies. We closed down 8 of them because they didn't work, and it's definitely continuing to be part of our reality that you can't plan a success. You need to try something and it will work or it won't, but often you will fail with what you're trying to do. And that's okay too, as long as you do it in a decent way. So we shut down 8 of them, and we are today running a portfolio of 10 startups with a total of a couple of hundred employees. So all relatively small companies, and most of them are within IT and tech of some sorts. And it's across Copenhagen, Berlin, and London. So that's Rainmaking. Then after our first couple of exits, we started getting a lot of requests from people, from other startups, other entrepreneurs, who said, can you help us with our business? Can you maybe mentor or be a board member, or can you even invest in us? And as much as we wanted to engage, we were also concerned about if it would defocus us too much, if in addition to having our own companies, which we were very busy with, also had to help other entrepreneurs with their companies. So for about a year's time, we didn't really know what to do about it, and said, no, we can't mentor, or we can't sit in your board, but we were a bit annoyed about it. But then we read about, in Fast Company, we read an article about Y Combinator, an accelerator program. We never heard about an accelerator before, and this was back in 2009. But we thought it was a great concept to get applications, to choose 10 startups and work with them systematically for a period of time, and then help them get investment, and then the investors could help them move onwards, and they would just become alumni with us. We could meet once a year, we could have an online platform, we could help them with some contacts, but basically we'll make ready for the next batch. We really like that idea. And in 2010, we launched that in Copenhagen, the first startup bootcamp. That's our brand, that's what we came up with, Startup Bootcamp. We launched that in 2010 in Copenhagen. And from there on it went really fast, because we were the first kind of serious, you can say in some ways, accelerator in our geography. And quickly we got a lot of attention, and we expanded it to other cities as well. And today it's in 15 cities around the world, mainly in Europe, where it's I think at least one of the 3 leading accelerators, and then also in Singapore, and we just launched New York and Miami as well. So that's been going great, and it's a lot of fun. Then 2.5 years ago, we started a co-working space, because that was also a rather new phenomenon at the time, and it was also today now exploding everywhere. Everyone wants a co-working space nowadays, and it's a great idea, I think, to get a lot of entrepreneurs to sit in the same house and knowledge share and build a community. And we started it, and we call it Rainmaking Loft. We made one in London that we are running with 250 entrepreneurs just next to Tower Bridge. Then we opened up in Berlin, next to Checkpoint Charlie, where there's 200 entrepreneurs. And then 1st of March, we opened up in Copenhagen, where we have a house with 350 entrepreneurs. So we're bringing together our own startup, our accelerators, and the wider community in these houses, in these physical houses, where we can hang out together and meet and spend time together, which is really adding a lot of value to us as well. And then the newest thing is that we started advising governments, cities, and corporates on their innovation. Actually, not just advising, but executing a lot of things for them. So we work with a lot of the Fortune 500 companies who finally woken up to the reality that they need to innovate. They notice things like the success of Spotify and Uber and etc., and can see how a whole industry can change, and they can no longer just sit there at their board meetings and be proud of their core business and make a lot of money and not care about the startup community. They need to care about the startup community. And I would hope that they will also, maybe in a couple of years' time, maybe already today, there are some representatives from the big companies today in here, but probably they are far too few. And what we're seeing now is that more and more big companies engage. For instance, we're working with the biggest bank in Denmark called Danske Bank, and they just sent 5 people to Slush in Finland, for instance. And that's a new thing. That's the first year they're doing that. But we're seeing that all over the world. We work in 30 countries now with big corporates, and we're seeing that more and more of the big corporates are actually getting interested in this. So I would encourage all of you to think about your corporates, your friends in big corporates, and pull them to this conference so they will be here together with you, because they also have an innovation agenda, and they should be thinking about technology and startups just as much as we are. So that's my own background, and as I mentioned, I started being curious about, do you actually need to work all the time to become successful? They definitely told me that at McKinsey. My dad told me that. The autobiographies I read about famous people, they often, within the first 3 to 5 pages, told about how big a sacrifice they've made. An example of that is Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart, who said on his deathbed to his wife, "I blew it." And he had been the richest man in the States for 7 years in a row. And how did he think on his deathbed that he blew it? It was because he didn't know basically didn't know his grandchildren. He hardly knew his own children, and he felt that his wife only stayed with him out of obligation. And he was probably right, because he was working all the time, and if you don't spend time with other people, how can they keep loving you? So of course, that is a challenge. And if it's really so that you can only have success or a good life, then I would actually consider choosing a good life. So I became very interested in the topic, how can you have both? And together with my Canadian co-author, Jordan Milne, we decided to make a book about it because it was really relevant to us. And how do you make sure that you actually spend some time on this topic? That can be to make a commitment to make a book. So if there's something you really care about, maybe consider writing a book about it, because then you have a platform for engaging on this topic. You also have a great platform to reach out to people that inspires you, to interview them. So that's what we did. We thought that this is a big world, and yes, most of the successful people, they tell us that we need to work all the time if we want to become successful, but maybe there are also someone out there contradicting that. So we started searching the globe for different kind of role models, people that we will feel inspired by because they actually managed to have a good life while they were building their companies. It took us 2 years, but we found 25 such role models from all over the world, a lot from the States, a lot from Europe, some from Asia, a couple from Russia, and were surprised to learn how happy they actually were and how many things they had in their lives. Going on vacation, spending time with friends, having what we will all call a good life, and at the same time they were incredibly successful. And we were curious about how do you actually do that? Because that's what everyone wants, and it's very, very difficult. It's not to say it's easy, because it's not. It's very difficult, and how do you guys do that? And that became the book called Winning Without Losing, where we have 66 specific strategies for how to actually live this life and manage. And it's based on these 25 role models. So very short chapters that you can read on the bus, or basically also on the loo or whatever, where you where you tend to enjoy to read, and you can read it in like 5-10 minutes each chapter. And then some of them might resonate with you, some of them might not. But our aim was to make something very useful for the entrepreneur, not a theoretical framework, because honestly we don't have time for that. It's so far it's been translated to 13 languages. It become a bestseller in a lot of the countries where it's out, on Amazon as well. And I learned a lot about the book industry in that process. One thing that I learned is that you don't get to design your own cover. So just a few insights on the book industry. If any of you are thinking about writing a book, it's a weird industry. You'll be surprised. But anyway, we designed this cover. We had a designer do it. I'm from Scandinavia. We like this clean design. So we were quite happy with this one. I actually like this one better. I can see how it's a bit more catchy with the yellow circle there. So I'm fine with that. But we had then the Spanish publisher. They came up with this one. And I mean, you look at that level they have there, and look at the beautiful level that we came up with. And I think they've had a meeting where they talked about we need to find another level, and then they put some intern on the job, and that intern came up with that one. I wonder why was that necessary, but it's a little fun thing. And then there's the Russian version. I can't read Russian. I don't even, there's no reason that I can be sure this is my own, that this is my book. I don't know the number 12 down there. There's nowhere in our book where there's a number 12. But they pay us the royalties, and it's the bestseller in Russia, so I don't challenge it. Also, they took out one of the chapters. You see it's 65 here. I didn't write about Putin anywhere, so that's not the thing. When the book was published in China, we had a chapter that mentioned Dalai Lama, and I'm not proud to say it, but we actually took out that chapter to kind of accomplish for that wouldn't be popular in China. So a few adaptations like that, and a few interesting learnings from the publishing industry. These are the 25 role models, amazing people, and I'm going to mention a few of the lessons now. So 6 specific, 2 minutes about each of these specific advice, and maybe a few of them will hopefully change your life for the better. One is to find your co-founders. This has really been the most profound thing that I have learned in my own career. The first 5 years where I was doing business, from 18 to 23, I didn't have any co-founders. I thought that I could do it all on my own, and I was wrong. I was too young, but I was also on my own. And what I've seen today is that with increasing competition, increasing complexity, it's almost impossible today to do it on your own. So if you're sitting with your startup as the only founder, if it's a consultancy, maybe that's fine. There are some businesses that, if you're selling your knowledge, you're selling your expertise, you're selling your time, and it's not scalable as such, then it's fine. But if you want to build something that's scalable and conquer a market, you need to be a full team of co-founders. Then when you're gathering your team of co-founders, you need to think in terms of finding people who have shared values, the same values as you have, but different skills. That is so important, those two things, because it's natural for us to hook up with someone who have the same skills as we have, because we hang out with these people. So at Startup Bootcamp, we often see a team coming in. They got to know each other at technical university, for instance, and it's like 4 really good programmers. And then 5 minutes later, another team come in. They got to know each other at business school. And they're really good business people. Their PowerPoint is amazing. But they can never code anything. And the coders, they will code and code and code, but when will they actually launch something in the market? How will they market it? How will they talk to the customers? They're all introvert, and they smell a little bit funny sometimes even. So all these people should actually go out, have a party together, and mix up and come together, come back again as 2 teams with a couple of business guys and a couple of developers. That would make so much sense. But often we know people who are like us, where we should actually go out and meet people who are different from us. So that's the part of the skills. And it's going to be frustrated sometimes because we don't then speak the same language. We don't really understand it. It's difficult to have different skill sets, different backgrounds. But it's that dynamic you really need. And when you find people you work well together with, this is a winning formula. Then there's the thing about the values, and that is really, really important, because you can rationalize why you should be working with someone, but if you don't share the values, if you don't have a good chemistry, if you don't enjoy spending time together, it's never going to work, because you need to spend a lot of time together when you're building a startup, and that can be either fun and give energy, or it can be draining you for energy. So if you're in a situation where it gets to be, I need to spend 2 hours with my co-founder, then you're really in trouble, and you should probably do something about it. Either improve the relationship or get out of it. Even though it would be damaging for the business, you need to move on and find some other co-founders that you work better with. In Rainmaking, we have this little test where we where we ask ourselves, every time we hire someone, so it's not even for co-founders, this is also for all team members, we ask ourselves, would I enjoy a trip to Berlin with this guy, where we were going to meet a client or an investor or something? Would I just be thinking about the meeting, or would I also enjoy spending the time on the plane talking to this guy or girl? And if the answer is yes, then that's great. It's a good match. If it's no, forget about it. Even though the other person might be amazing at what he or she is doing, if you don't enjoy spending time together, if you don't seek out each other's opinions and co-create, then it's not going to work in a startup. So find your co-founders. It's really key. Yes, it is difficult, but it's like also with a private relationship, it can be difficult, but it doesn't mean that you give up forever and just live alone. You do need to get out there and find the co-founders if you want to build something scalable. Make a to-do list. We all make to-do lists, at least most of us do, and nowadays we can have the most sophisticated online platforms to do that, where we can share tasks, we can allocate tasks to each other, we can be 30% done with a task or 40%. There's a few things it's fine in many ways, but we shouldn't obsess too much about it. There's a few things we should remember. One thing is that it's a never-ending list, and it's really good at generating stress to have a never-ending list. And often it just becomes longer and longer. And another thing we should remember is that on a list like that, it can look a bit like all tasks are created equal. And maybe you think, I can quickly do that one, so let me start with that one. But maybe you should rather have ignored that one, because this one up here is just so important. So you easily get into the psychology of, let me try to make the list shorter, which is actually not the right frame of mind. It's much more about, what is the widely important thing here? What is the key thing that will really move my business forward? Then focus on that. And often successful people, there are a lot of things they don't do, but they do a few things very well. And it's those few things we want to focus on. So how we have internalized that is to make a to-do list. So every morning I'll think about maximum 3 things that I want to accomplish today. Some progress that I can make today. It can be like, it's really important for my business to get this customer, or to fix this relationship with my lead developer. There's always something that is just so important, or get this investor on board, or launch this new feature, and that is what you want to be focusing on. And it's also sitting and updating your to-do list is procrastination in some ways, right? It's not the real work. Typing in right customer and we are 30% done with the dialogue, that's speculation if you're 30% done, and writing calling the customer, it's a lot better just to call the customer. So while it's fine to have a list of things that you could be working on, so you don't need to have it in your head, that's good for your stress levels, to write it down, have a note pen next to your bed and just write it down every time you come up with an idea, that's great. But more importantly, think every day in terms of what can I accomplish today that will move me forward on my long-term goals, and make sure it's something that you can do today, finish it, and remember to feel good about it. Because otherwise, as an entrepreneur, we never get finished with our jobs, of course. So we need to create situations where we can actually emotionally and mentally relax a little bit also, and just say, I finished this task that was on my today list, that's great, let me go and work out, or whatever you enjoy doing. Reinvent the meeting. That was something that my former boss, this successful Danish entrepreneur, really taught me. Because he would say things like, if we had a meeting, why don't we walk instead of just sitting here? Or even run. We had many running meetings. And the good thing about it, of course, it's in some ways it's multitasking, but this is actually a way of multitasking that works, because the brain works better when the body is in motion. It's actually a terrible idea to sit down in a chair, then to put a desk in between you, close the door so the air gets stale, and you sit in that utterly uninspiring environment with a table between you. Terrible for building relationships, and terrible for being creative. Instead, have go outside. And when I really internalized this wisdom, my days became a lot better, because I'm from Copenhagen and we have a beautiful but quite short summer, and these beautiful days, when I had a full calendar, I would be a little bit depressed about that. I'm going to miss this awesome day because I have to be indoor all day. Then I learned that I actually don't. It's just a matter of stepping out from the office building, and there's a park nearby. In most cases, there is some, kind of inspiring outdoor, not too far away. So it's just a matter of, instead of going to the door to the meeting room, go out the main door instead, together with my guest, and then have the meeting outdoor. And in most cases, the guests actually appreciate it. They get a better experience too. They get something to remember as well. Don't be afraid to be a little bit different. This is something that will add value for everyone, and you will have better meetings for it. Tell everybody about your idea. Something that's very inefficient is to keep your idea to yourself. And we see that still, it's luckily the trend is moving towards more transparency and openness, and people are sharing their ideas, but there's still a lot of secrecy and being in stealth mode. It sounds cool, but it's ridiculous. So the thing is, when you get a great idea, you might think that the whole world is out there looking for your idea to steal. That is not the case. People are busy with their own lives. People would rather work on their own ideas. Of course, if you have something that should be patented, or you have the recipe for Coca-Cola, I wouldn't put that out open on the internet. But most concepts, the whole value lies in the execution. All of the 24 businesses we have done hasn't been a matter of patents or anything like that. It hasn't been a matter of the idea even. It's been a matter of actually day after day doing some good execution. And this conference called How to Web, I imagine that the companies that you guys are mainly building will be the same. That it's about getting started quickly and getting customers, getting investors, getting employees, and building something. And you do that a lot better when you interact with and share instead of when you keep closed. So an example of that is when you meet someone at a networking event. It could be out here. Maybe it even happened today, and don't forget about the past, but think about the future. So it could be that someone is asking, someone is saying, I have a great idea. You ask the person, so what is it? And the person say, oh, I'd rather not share yet. We'll be launching in 2 weeks. That actually breaks down the communication. Now there is no way that you can offer that person anything. You can't offer your insights. You can't say, oh, that's interesting. I know a guy who's doing a bit the same. Maybe you can connect with him and you can help each other out or something like that. Or if you build that, I actually have a customer for it. Or I know an investor who's interested in that. You have no way of helping that person because the person is not sharing his or her idea. So that's a very, very inefficient way to be an entrepreneur. So another key thing that we learned from one of the role models, that was Jason Fried, the founder of 37 Signals, that is now changed name for, I think, Basecamp. Extremely successful thing. And he said he had this simple concept. He only works 40 hours a week. That's basically also what I do. And he had this simple concept where he would ask himself, what would I be great at doing right now? And then he would focus on that. So instead of, we often think that it's very professional to make a lot of planning and fill up your calendar, and I'll be doing cold calling there, I'll be doing bookkeeping there, emailing there, and block out your calendar and be very professional about it. But the challenge is that we are not machines. We have energy levels, and we're sometimes feeling extroverted, sometimes feeling introverted, sometimes our brain is very sharp, at other times it's quite slow. And by asking yourself, what would I be great at doing right now, you optimize the hours that you are actually in flow. And when you're in flow, you can be 10 times as efficient as when you're not in flow. So this is actually a way to get maybe 80 hours of work out of just 40 hours. And I think that's one of the key things why Jason is so successful with what he's doing. Another thing that we learned from one of the role models was to make sure that you get many attempts, because none of us knows what will be successful. Not even the best investors can pick a winner. They need to get many attempts, and we need the same as entrepreneurs. And one of the role models in Winning Without Losing is called Derek Sivers, and he created something called CD Baby that he sold for $22 million. It was his 13th attempt. And when we interviewed him, we were very curious when we asked him, so what did you do differently than the other 12 times? Because the other 12 times failed, and CD Baby was a huge success. So we hoped that he could just say, I did these 3 things different, and that would be amazing. But what he actually said was, and I was, I think, very honest of him, he said that, I actually don't know. I don't know what I did differently. I feel that I just tried again, and this time it suddenly worked. And what we took away from that was, it was really, really good that he did try again. After 12 failures, you could easily give up. And he tried again, and then he became successful. And now he's a best-selling author as well, and all kinds of amazing things are happening for him. So to make sure to get many attempts, because if you spend 20 years on one startup, you surely not get many attempts, right? You get 1, maybe 2. So of course you need to be persistent, but you also need to be honest with yourself. If the concept is not working, maybe it's better to get out of it and start something else. So these are 6 things that we have learned from the role models. It's been a lot of fun. Feel free to follow me on Twitter or connect on my email there. It's been a real pleasure. Time is up. I hope to see you somewhere around. Thank you.
So let's ask if they have one question
Okay.
before running away.
Yes.
One question for Martin? Yes?
Can you please explain point 5 a bit more in detail, the one with the flow and the energy and working in 8 hours like in 16?
The question was, can you please give us more detail about the energy stuff and how can you do to work in 8 hours like in 16?
Yes, there's a lot of research on the topic, right, and what is flow, and I'm not an expert in it, but I really noticed in my own life that sometimes I sit down and I work, maybe 2 hours on something, and it's just amazing. Things are flowing for me. I don't notice time, I don't notice my surroundings, I'm working on something and I produce really high quality. And then I noticed other times where I drag myself through a couple of hours or even half a day, and I'm forcing myself to do X, Y, Z, but it's not really great. And that just led me to ask the basic question, how do I get more of the time that I'm in flow and less of the time where I'm dragging myself through tasks? One of the things that I learned was that if I'm dragging myself through tasks, maybe what I need is a little meditation or a little nap. And then I actually do that. And I know that can seem a bit, it can provoke some people, but I can go and have a nap at 12 o'clock in the middle of the day sometimes, or meditation. I don't do a big deal out of it, I just disappear. And then I notice that afterwards, it's just like 10-20 minutes, and afterwards I'm a lot sharper. Or I run. Sometimes I ask myself, what is it I need right now? Is it a nap, or is it a run, or is it a meal, or is it just to have a walk around the building? It can be different things, but the more you learn to tune into what you actually need to to get in flow again, and you become really dedicated to that. So I actually see that as my most important task right now is actually to do a meditation, I can think. And then I do that, and that's taking responsibility for my own efficiency. And a lot of people, unfortunately, and I used to be one of them, they don't take that responsibility. You do what is expected of you. Sit on your chair and try to slave away, but you're actually not really getting great stuff done. And you can't allow yourself that. As an entrepreneur, you need to be really sharp when you're working. And if what needs to happen for you to become sharp is to have a run, for instance, go have that run, even though it's maybe 2 p.m. and the normal thinking is that you should be working. So that's how I internalize that. But there's a lot of research on it and on the concept and theory of flow. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Martin.
Thanks.
Martin, he's going to be around for questions further on.
Absolutely.